So on my Instagram, if you follow me on there, I've shared, snippets here and there about how I made, this transition last year. It's going on 2 years now, actually, since I made the change. And I just want to share the journey because I know a lot of people are sort of in that space where they're transitioning careers or thinking about transitioning careers, and I will sort of share with you like my thought process, why I decided to move cities in order to change my career, how I chose the career that I chose. I don't think there's anything like really big about it, but you never know who we can help. And also just sort of what I'm doing right now. Hi, and welcome to Motari Media. My name is Stephanie. I am a small business marketer and consultant. If it's your very first time on Motari Media, thank you so much for joining in today. Make sure that you subscribe. If you're someone who's been here several times, especially the OGs, thank you so much for joining in. So, today I want to share the journey of how I transitioned from biotech or physics to digital marketing. So let's dive right into the video. So welcome guys. So in I think it was 2022, right? So I had started work as a food technologist. Basically what a food technologist is someone who assists food scientists with like recipes and helping people who want to get like their food in the market. So I worked as a food technologist and also a QC technologist. And mind you, this was a really good, well paying job, you know, um, in Prince Edward Island, which is where I used to live. And this was a job that, I didn't think that I was qualified for it because to be very fair, I graduated with a physics degree, right? If you know anything about physics, if you really want to have a career in physics, it's either you go two paths, and I might be wrong, but this is just based on my experience. It's either you go the path of, more school, meaning you can't just end in your bachelor's, you have to do your master's and perhaps a PhD as well. Or, no, actually, that's the only route as far as I'm concerned. But the thing is, within that route, there's more routes. But usually, with just a bachelor's, it's very difficult to get a job in physics. So you either go on to become, a researcher, be it theoretical or practical, or you decide to be a physics teacher. But in order to do any of those things, you need more education, right? And at that point in time, I had obviously just spent 5 years in school, started out with computer science, then got into physics, which took a lot of energy before I actually realized that, oh, this was something that I wanted to do and I loved. But then, living as an immigrant in Canada, that means that your tuition is ridiculously expensive. Now, I had already spent 1 year doing something that, I didn't want to do because it was the reigning career. Computer science was a big deal and still is a big deal till today. If I loved it, it would have been great, but I didn't. Um, so I ended up finding myself in physics or choosing physics because I really loved it. There was just something. So I'm a naturally curious person, especially when it comes to things regarding the earth, the world, how it works. I'm fascinated by the sky, by stars. Fun fact, in high school, I actually wanted to do astrology when I got to university, but then I was told that it's not a career where people make money. Anyways, that person who told me that thing, I knew they said it out of, the good, their goodwill for me because they had good intentions for me, obviously. But, anyways, there's no need crying over spoilt milk. So I ended up getting into physics due to that curiosity. So did I think that I wanted to build a career in physics, or did I even know exactly what I wanted to do? No, I just knew that I enjoyed the course and it was something that I was going to do well in. Now, mind you, physics is it's not the easiest course in the world, right? But if you really love it, you're going to do good. So I remember, taking courses and even at some point thinking that, I wanted to be a medical physicist. And then I went to the hospital and shadowed a medical physicist. I looked into things like, radiology, being like a radiology technician, people who do like your x-rays, your ultrasound, that type of thing. Imagine me considering health, the health sector, very interesting. Um, but I ended up shadowing that person, and I thought the work was nice and fascinating, but I didn't really see a clear pathway for me getting into that. So I ended up, just graduating with physics and then trying to find something. So if there's one thing to know about Prince Edward Island, it's that it's a place that's filled with biotech companies. It was a really good place for, biotech. And so COVID happened, right? I graduated in December 2019, right? And COVID hit around that time, 2020, everybody was home. And so applying for a job was so difficult. Applying for a job, what, I'll talk about my experience being a physicist in another video, or studying physics. Studying physics doesn't make you a physicist. But studying physics, I loved it, and I'll share more about that experience. Um but COVID hit and it was nearly impossible to get a job. Imagine being at home, people avoiding, you. I remember I interviewed for a job, and it was at an aerospace company, which was such a big deal, by the way. Now, mind you, in PI, and please, if you don't agree and you're from PI, that's fine. Like, I'm just sharing my own experience. But in PI, a lot of what I was told and what I heard was because everyone was sort of going through that, I want to get my PR, I want to get my PR. A lot of people were settling for retail jobs, which again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I know a lot of people who did retail and now have ended up having amazing careers and, having that PR that gets you, lower tuition fees and just more opportunities in general. It made sense for them to have, that kind of path and choose that kind of path, just getting something in order to get their PR. But the thing about me is, I find it very difficult to do something that I don't want to do. Like, it's hard. And I'll give you two examples in this video of times where I started something and quit. Like, oh, you know what? Three times that I started something and quit because I did it because I just wanted to get something and perhaps like succumb to peer pressure or the need to, have something going. And then I just couldn't. Like, I just couldn't. Like, those who know me know that if I don't want to do something, I don't want to do it. Like, if I'm doing something I don't want to do, I will be so frustrated and I'll be crying as I'm doing it, and then I'll just quit. Right. So, okay, let me just say it since I'm here. Right. I remember my very first job in Prince Edward Island. I had just moved. So I moved to Canada when I was 16. And so I had gotten a job in, should I do it in this video? Okay, I'll just give you snippets. So I quit after, I think it was 1 month or 1 week, which you would think is a record, right? Like starting a job and quitting in 1 week. It was a housekeeping role, and it was just too much for me. Like, I just couldn't. Um, the second time, so this was actually 2020, and that's why I remember this story, right? But I had started a job as a production technician at a biotech company. And so I had gotten a call. I had applied for the job, gotten a call. I did the interview over the phone, and then I went in person. And it was a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. job. right? So you had to be on your feet for 12 hours making sugar products. So like gummy, so natural health products actually. So like gummies and lozenges. And it was in a very cold environment and very just, it's production, right? So it's a warehouse. I drove there that night. I started work at 7. By 12 a.m., I knew that I was going to quit. And so I went to my car during the break at 12 a.m. and I sent an email to the HR person. And I was like, yeah, I can't do it. I really appreciate it. Funny enough, I found the email recently when I was preparing for this video. And I was like, oh, everybody treated me nice. And they did. They were really amazing people. Even the CEO of the company was quite inspiring, in the intro speech he gave us. But I was just like, it really couldn't be me. And so I quit. I told her I wouldn't be able to come back the next day, just because it was a lot. So you would have to work, I think it was 4 days you work and 3 days you have off, but it would be for 12 hours and you're standing, for those 12 hours, and it just wasn't going to work for me. But I don't want this video to be too long because I still need to talk about getting into marketing. And I think there's going to, not I think there will be more follow-up videos where I share even more details about all of these experiences. Just hoping that it encourages someone to see that, the journey isn't always straight. I always equate it to like a sine or a cosine curve, the physics in me coming out, right? But life is like ups and downs. It's in waves, but the thing is that it's all converging to a single point. So you're moving forward. The fact that things are going up and down doesn't mean that you're going backward. It doesn't mean that you're starting all over. I didn't see digital marketing as me starting all over. I had a like wealth of experiences and different things that I had gathered for my many years, being in Canada, things that I had learned in school, things that I had learned from people around me, and all of those things made up who I was at that point in time. And so I didn't see digital marketing as I'm starting all over. I just saw it as I'm taking from the things that I've already done, and it's given me even more clarity and direction as to what it is I wanted to do, right? But anyway, so this particular job, I quit it that day, and I basically didn't have a job for, that year. And the good thing is that we had a home in Prince Edward Island. So I didn't have to pay, like my parents were responsible for me in terms of rents, so it wasn't like so I think I recognize the fact that for someone else, there might not have been that luxury of just being able to wait around for what it is you want to do. You might just, and that's why I said at the beginning, right? Like everybody makes decisions based on, their circumstances and what they need at that point in time. And our journeys are going to be different, right? So I ended up, staying at home for a few, I think it was almost close to a year before I then catch this. So a job opened up at that same company, and it was for a research assistant. Um, and rather than working in the production house, you would work in the research space. And this is basically putting the formulations together. Now, this wasn't really in line with physics, but it was something that I knew that I could do and I could learn. And it was better pay and it was full time as well. And you would be working regular hours, right? So and that's to tell you that the fact that you left somewhere after, and you know what, leave places well, you never know if you're going to go back. So I ended up applying for that job. And in my application, I stated that, oh, I had worked at this place previously as a production, technician. I didn't quite mention that it was for one. Yeah, I didn't mention. So you don't need to mention what you don't need to mention. They have their records. If they want to check, they can check, right? But I didn't mention that it was just for 12 hours. I just said, oh, I've worked here before. I know the environment, which I did know. I had seen what the production plant was like. I knew what the production was. So I used that experience that I had had for 12 hours to secure a new job with them in a different department that paid more, and it was full time. And I would be able to use that opportunity to process my PR as well. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? So that's kind of how I then got that job. After that, I worked there for a while, was able to get my PR, and then I moved to a different job, right, with the government of PEI, and I was working as a food technologist, right? So my experience at that initial company, right, as a research assistant, I was able to use that to get a job in a different place, which, by the way, I didn't even think I was qualified for as well. So I've previously had this track record of not thinking that I'm qualified for things, which is so ridiculous because then I ended up getting them. So I think that has given me a lot of boost and morale when it comes to really any kind of job. Like, I don't hold back on applying for things, even if I feel like, oh, I only have one skill they're looking for or one thing they're looking for. I'm like, everybody's going to train, there's going to be opportunities to grow and learn. So I don't have to have everything. I have what is necessary. What I have is enough, to start with. So that's the mentality that I've always had. But anyway, so I'd applied for this other job. And mind you, so this previous workplace ended up becoming a little toxic. Not again amazing people, right? But one specific person there was trying to make it hell, for me. And again, if I don't want to do something, I don't want to do it. Like I didn't. I only have one life to live. I don't really sign up for inconveniences. Now I've learned how to navigate situations like that. But again, I was younger then, right? And so I quit. I quit that job without having another job. I had applied for this other job, but I couldn't stay in that place. And mind you, my PR was still being processed. And although it wasn't dependent on that job, it was dependent on me having a full-time permanent job. But anyways, that's a completely different story for another day. But we ended up so I ended up staying at home, not having a job. I sold my car. So I was driving an SUV at that point, and I knew that okay, I can't financially. And this SUV at some point it started to fail me. It was having some technical issues that would cost me, money. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna fix it this one time, and I'm gonna sell it. So I fixed it, I sold it, I got, over more than 10 grand for the car. And then I used part of that money to buy a smaller car, which I'm still driving till today. I have made better financial, choices. And the rest of the money I saved and used to sort of take care of myself up until like whatever next opportunity would come by. So it was during that period where I didn't have a job that I started to think of entrepreneurship. Like I'd never seen myself as an entrepreneur. I always thought I was going to be a 9 to 5er, but I guess I had enough time to just start to think, It was then I started to learn about like investing and finances and money and, all of that stuff. But then I ended up getting a call from that company that I had applied to. Keep in mind, this is for a food technologist. I know nothing about food science. I don't have a food and nutrition degree. I didn't even really know what the job was about. I just knew that it was food related. I've kind of worked in natural health products, although this is not food, or directly related to what I did, but I just applied because the pay was really good, you know. So for transparency's sake, right, the first place I was working at, I was earning not I don't think it was 45, I think it was 35K a year, which is low, but I would say for that time it was better than working retail. I didn't even negotiate then. I didn't even know things like negotiation. My god. But this particular place, I would go from earning 45K to earning 63K, right? So because of the pay, I thought, oh my God, I'm not even qualified for this job. And actually, like career wise, I really wasn't. Experience wise, I really wasn't. But I wanted the money, and I knew that I'm able to learn on the job. And so I ended up applying and getting called. And, that was, no, actually, you know what? Yeah, no, I think I was still working at the other place when I interviewed because I remember that I had to leave work to go do the interview at home and then drive back. Yeah, yeah, I think that's what happened. So I was still working there when they called me. Oh, yeah, so I was working there when I was interviewed, but I didn't hear back from them for like a while and I quit my job without getting another job. That's what happened, right? So I did the interview and guys, I was sweating my pits. Like I was so nervous. I think that's the most nervous I've ever been for an interview. And I was sweating my pits because I was like, oh my, the answers I'm giving. Like I tried my best, so I do my best to be very like, just give sensible answers. But if it didn't day, it didn't day. If you don't know, you don't know. And I did not know. Some things they were asking me related to like, quality control. I just picked some of the things I had heard in my previous workplace and put something together. And in my head, I was like, Omo, I'm not getting this job. Do you get? Like, there's no way. But to my surprise, after I'd quit my job, like a month later or like 2 weeks later, they called me and they offered me the job, and I was shook. Guys, I was shook. That's how I then ended up, transitioning to that position and that role. I think this video is even more about my career journey, which honestly, there's a lot of details. I'm young, but I've honestly been through a lot of jobs. And if I want to start talking about my career journey, it will be plenty, right? But I feel like now I want to do a separate video for the digital marketing one. So there will be a part two, you know, to this video. Yeah, there'll be a part two to this video. But basically, had in this is the background that I had before transitioning into digital marketing, right? So if you've already put the pieces together, there's no correlation between what I was doing and digital marketing, right? But in the next video, I'm going to talk about how I then went from this job as, a food technologist and quality control technician and, just being in the biotech space in general to then move into marketing and moving to Toronto to pursue, marketing. But let's talk about that in the next video. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. I really hope that, you enjoyed or learned something from it. I think there were a few nuggets there, and even some things were coming to me as I was speaking. And it's just so good to reminisce on where I'm coming from in comparison to where I'm at now. And I will be sharing in part two of this series. It's not really a series, but I'll be sharing in part two. Let's see how long it goes. But I'll be sharing how I then went from biotech to physics. So make sure you stay tuned. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and share it with others and like and follow me on Instagram, please, at Motari Media, and also join my subscription. So people who are signed up to the email list get to see these videos before everyone else. So make sure you subscribe. This is Stephanie Eto, your host. Thank you so much for watching today's episode.